Wu Qi's father Regnar and his brother Roger sat on the sofa with no expressions. After the nurse came out, she respectfully said to them, "Mr. Wu, the patient has regained consciousness." Regnar asked coldly, "Is the stomach lavage finished?" The nurse nodded and whispered, "It's finished." "Yeah?" Regnar asked again, "The stuff you are feeding this time has been disinfected?" The nurse hurriedly said, "It has been sterilized. We put it in a pressure cooker for high temperature and high pressure sterilization. Although the smell cannot be eliminated, it can be confirmed that there are no bacteria or viruses in it." Now, Wu Qi's iron rule of supplements every hour has remained the same. Regnar didn't dare to stop him. After all, he would die after a minute. He was really afraid that something would happen to his son. Therefore, he discussed with his medical experts and came up with a temporary solution, which is to put the supplement for Wu Qi in a pressure cooker for half an hour in advance, so that at least it won't be infested and make him sick. This is the only buffer they can do at this stage. Regnar glanced at a few nurses, waved his hand sullenly, and said, "Okay, you can go out. Remember to prepare the next meal in advance." The nurse nodded and said, 8 meals tonight have been prepared in advance, and each one will be autoclaved and sterilized in advance, and then placed at room temperature for the patient. You rest assured." Regnar suddenly felt a strong nausea, waved his hand and said, "Okay, go now." After the nurses went out, Roger whispered to Regnar, "Dad, it's not a problem that it's always like this. He eats shish tea every hour. If this spreads out, what would happen the Wu family's face?" Regnar asked, "What should I do?" "You can't watch your brother die, right?" Roger said hurriedly, "I didn't mean that. I wanted to say, or let's take Wu Qi back to Suzhou. It's not a way to stay here. Go back to our own home and use our own doctors and nurses. Be more assured than they are tight-lipped." Regnar said, "It's okay to let your brother go back, we can't leave yet." "Why?" Roger asked in surprise. "What else can we do here?" Regnar said, "I suspect that your brother had this problem suddenly. It is definitely not accidental. There must be some clue behind that we haven't found out yet. So I plan to stay in Orus Hill for a while and make a good investigation. You have to stay with me." Roger nodded when he heard this, and said, "Okay, Dad, I will stay with you." Regnar hummed and said, "In this case, let our doctor go home with your brother first tomorrow morning." After speaking, he stood up and said, "Let's go in and see your brother." The father and son got up, pushed open the door of the ward inside, and a disgusting stench came over their faces. Although the windows are open and the exhaust is open, the smell will really last for a while. Wu Qi was lying on the bed, with tears in his eyes and silently looking out the window. He smelled the strong smell when he breathed, and he already felt bored. Wu Qi. Seeing him so decadent, Regnar gave a distressed cry. Wu Qi didn't look back, still staring out the window, choked up and said, "Dad, you let me die. I have to do such a disgusting thing every hour, I really want to collapse." Regnar hurriedly stepped forward, shook his hand, and said, "Good son, you have to remember one sentence, it is never better to die than to live." Wu Qi burst into tears, "But, who can live worse than me? If I have to live like this in my life, then I really want to die now." Regnar felt distressed and said seriously, "Wu Qi, don't worry, no matter what method is used, Dad will heal you, Dad promises you." Wu Qi turned his head, looked at his father, and asked subconsciously, "Dad, is what you said is true?" As he spoke, a stench hit Regnar's cheek. Regnar's eyes reddened by the smell, he also shed 2 lines of tears. He could only resist the urge to vomit, nodded and said, "It's true, don't worry." After speaking, Regnar said again, "I will arrange for someone to take you back tomorrow. Dad will find the culprit in Orus Hill, and then find a cure for you. After you go home, you can take care of your health at home and wait for Dad's good news." Wu Qi felt a glimmer of hope and nodded excitedly. Roger on the side could not help sighing and said, Wu Qi, don't worry, if you let brother find out who did this, brother will kill him and give you revenge. Wu Qi nodded, moved, and said, thank you, brother. At this time, the nurse knocked on the door and came in and said, Mr. Wu, there is a Mr. Song and a Miss Song who want to see you. Mr. Song, Miss Song? Ragnar frowned slightly, and then suddenly realized, it should be from the Song family, please let them in quickly. After speaking, he hurriedly added, please go to the outside living room, don't bring them into the ward. The nurse nodded and turned to leave. Roger asked in surprise, Dad, is someone from the Song family here? It should be. Ragnar said, we have come to Orus Hill this time. We haven't visited the Song family yet. Maybe the Song family has received the news, so that's why they came over. Roger nodded, and suddenly thought of Warnya, the eldest of the Song family. The last time he saw Warnya was 3 or 4 years ago, when she was already very beautiful. At that time, he already had the idea of pursuing Warnya. After all, Warnya was not only beautiful, well-educated, and capable, but more importantly, the strength of the Song family was not weak, and it could be said that it was right in line with the Wu family. However, he hadn't finished his studies at the time, so he didn't have time to pursue Warnya. Later, when he returned to China, he was busy handling the business from his family, not to mention coming to Orus Hill to pursue Warnya, so this matter was crushed by him. Now, he heard that someone from the Song family had come, and his affection for Warnya suddenly rekindled. He couldn't help but look forward to it in his heart. One of the 2 people who he hoped to meet now was Warnya,